So, Mikey?
What's up, brother? Welcome back to the Dirt Road. I'm here with Mr. Rick.
And that's Mike. What's happening, brother?
What's going on?
Nothing.
So today we are talking about... Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. But today we are talking... I don't have any cash on me right now. This guy's going to send someone to break my legs soon, folks.
That would have been done a month ago.
I got to make a note of that and actually remember to do this because I'm a retard. But we were talking off air, honestly, before we started recording about Biden's pardon of Hunter and kind of going over both sides of it, both sides of how you would react to something like that. But I'll let Rick kind of.
How do you think history's going to look at this?
I think unfavorably because he just sandbagged his own party with it. I mean, but and it looks kind of bad, right? It looks like. Here's my thing with this, and this is why I think it's a bad thing. It's not just about pardoning his son. What he did was he just covered the linchpin in an entire RICO corruption case, that entire family and a lot of other people involved in the dirty stuff that was going on in Ukraine and everywhere else with them. So he just kind of took away an ability for a prosecutor to go after them for a lot of the conspiracy type crimes they committed.
Not necessarily. It's funny you brought that. I mean, I was reading when I was reading. I don't remember today, yesterday, whatever. Actually, I think it was today. They said that it actually might have the opposite effect because now if they go to prosecute the other people involved, Hunter Biden can't plead the fifth because he's under no danger of being incriminated. So he can't now say, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to protect from self-incrimination because there is no self-incrimination because he can't go to jail. They could actually force him.
Compel his testimony.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I never even would have thought of that.
Neither would I.
I'm not an attorney, obviously. I'm not that well versed in it.
Yeah, but that's interesting, right?
That is interesting, actually. They could compel him to testify.
Yeah.
But that's like I think the hot take that you're seeing mostly around, like, is that basically they're covering up the family's crimes by covering up him. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not even talking about the family. I'm talking more about like his compatriots, the people involved in. Burisma or whatever else.
The deals he made with these other institutions or individuals.
So if that comes up, they're saying that now if there was no pardon, he could legitimately invoke the fifth and say, I don't want to incriminate myself by giving this information.
Right.
But now because he can't be prosecuted, he doesn't have that protection.
To testify because now it becomes evidence and he can
right?
testify. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I wonder how that would play out in a court, actually. I wonder how that would go. That'd be interesting to watch it happen.
I don't know. But, who knows? But I have, and I was just telling you a couple of seconds ago, I mean, I have mixed emotions about from a father's point of view, I get it.
No, I get it. Listen, I get it. And Biden put in his statement that you were just reading about how it's political prosecution, and most people would be prosecuted for a crime of this nature. There's we're reading an article about this when he first got indicted, and they were trying to say that it was a political indictment, but the response was there are thousands of people across the country every year that get prosecuted for this.
And there's probably tens of thousands that don't.
Probably tens of thousands that don't. But, at the same time...
It might be political, Mike, right? I mean, because
there is definitely a political element to that. 100%.
The way I was thinking of it, though, was not... And again, obviously you and I don't know, but... I was thinking more not that it was political, like let's go get Joe Biden. I was thinking more political, like let's show we're not just out getting Trump and Republicans.
That's what I would think too.
You know what I mean?
That would be my thought too. My thought would be that they tried to get him for the lowest level stuff they could, just to kind of throw it on the fire and be like, oh look, we took care of this. Even though reality is, he's done far, far more egregious crimes than that. And this is just the ones they took out of the fire, just to kind of say, oh, look, we prosecuted them. And reality is that the crimes are far worse than that and far more than that.
Right, so there may be, there probably are political undertones or overtones, whatever.
There's absolutely political overtones to it.
Right.
It's just how deeply do they go and what is the real intent, right? That's where it kind of becomes...
But ironically, here this great defender of democracy, Joseph Robinette Biden, who says that Trump is a threat to democracy because he says these things about the Justice Department, basically just validated everything Trump's been saying, that the Justice Department is politically motivated, that they are this Frankenstein's monster that does what it wants, and that they're unfair and all. So he's really validating what Trump has been saying.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because for the last 4 years, he's been saying that those statements are a threat to democracy, right?
Right.
Trump's trying to undermine our institutions and, go after our
He's basically admitting
rule of order.
he's admitting that he expects them to do to him what he's been doing to everybody else for the last 4 years.
Yeah. So
that's basically what he's saying. So
I was just taking a look at the way he worded the part. Well, not him, obviously. A lawyer wrote it, but
whoever wrote it,
the way the lawyers wrote it was very smart because that really is one of the part of the original intent of giving a president this power. 'Cause this is, by the way, the only truly dictatorial power a president has.
Sure.
There is no check on this at all.
Yeah.
Congress can't do shit. The courts can't do shit. Nobody could do shit. If he wanted to just right now let every low-level federal drug offender out of jail with a snap of it, he can.
Well, yeah, it's an absolute power. That's one of the only ones they have.
So the question is, why would the founders who opposed monarchs, right, and who opposed the whole idea of that sort of power, why would they give this one man this type of power? And one of the reasons is because they did envision political prosecutions because they lived through those, Mike.
Yeah, under King George, they were living through it.
Right.
Everything that's in the Constitution is there for because they lived through it. It's things they experienced. And it was written in response to the things that are being done to them.
Right.
To negate that and to mitigate that and make a country where these things couldn't happen or wouldn't happen or could at least be remedied if they did.
Could be remedied, exactly, right? Yeah. So this is a remedy so that if the system, I mean, they didn't have a deep state or anything like that back then, but I'm sure they envisioned, a government that could abuse its power and put people in jail for political reasons. And this way, this one man who isn't going to be, he can't be impeached for it, he can't be anything for it. That's the only thing, by the way, you can't pardon is for impeachment. So a president can't, so he can't pardon himself if he's impeached because it's not technically a criminal
act.
It's
conviction.
It's not a criminal conviction, right? It's a political thing. But anyway, that aside, so whoever wrote this for Joe Biden obviously knows this, right? And so he puts it in this way that Hunter Biden was a victim. He was a victim of a political prosecution, which, like we said, maybe there's some truth to that.
There's some truth to that, yeah.
And that's the official reason that he gave. But he didn't even have to. He could have just said, listen, this is my son, you don't like it, go screw yourself.
Yeah, I mean, he's lame ducked anyway. He's not going in another round. He doesn't care.
Right, because in fact, I was wrong before, right? So there is one check on this power, and that's the voters.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Ford, he got his, a lot of people think maybe one of the reasons he lost the election was because of his pardon of Richard Nixon. So the voters can punish the president, but other than that, there's no check.
Or his party.
Or his party, sure.
Which is what the Democrats now are saying with this pardon. They feel like they've been sandbagged by him, and that it's going to damage their races going forward.
Yeah, well, why do you think he waited till after the election to do it? He could have done.
Of course.
They say, because the sentencing's come. No, because the election's over. That's
because the election's over.
Of course, but so the thing I was talking to you about before is I went and I just tried to look up and remember why the founders gave this power. So one of the reasons was that, but back when the ratification conventions were going on in the States, one of the big objections to the power of the pardon was they were afraid that a president could pardon people convicted of treason, right? And treason is one of only, I think, two, a bill of attainder. There's only a couple of crimes literally listed in the body of the Constitution, and treason is one of them, right? Yeah. So it says, I think you have to have at least two witnesses and whatever. There's an actual description of treason. So apparently the ratification conventions, one of the big objections to the Constitution was this power, right? Yeah. Why would we give a president who might be part of a treasonous, you see where I'm going with this? Yep. Part of a treasonous act, the power to pardon those people. And Hamilton had a great answer in Federalist 74. He said, because he was living, do you remember learning about Shays' Rebellion in school? All right, so he was living right after, Shays' Rebellion, which went on during the time of the Articles. And he said that's definitely, he gave him credit. He said that's a legitimate concern. But he said, in a time of rebellion, one of the big goals is to quell it, to get that rebellion down. Mm-hmm. So, and a good faith act of offering a pardon could definitely get that anger from the rebels out.
And take the appeasement and kind of bring the other side temperature down. Yeah, right. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Well, of course. I mean, Hamilton was a smart guy.
He really was, yeah.
So, anyway, what does this make me think of? Probably the same thing you're thinking of, right? January 6th.
Yep.
So, let's go back to George Washington, the first president, when the Whiskey Rebellion happened. And that was actually a real rebellion. That wasn't January 6th. That was...
There wasn't a riot at the Capitol.
That was federal officers being, harmed and so forth. And George Washington himself, as president, got on a horse and led the troops up to go, get this rebellion settled, countered rather. After all of that, they're arrested and all. He issues a sweeping pardon. Why? To bring the temperature of the country down. Right? George Washington's a great man. Joseph
smart.
Robinette Biden is not.
No.
There's a big difference between Joe Biden and George Washington. So I don't know if you and I ever had a conversation about this back at the time, but when January 6th happened, and I think a little differently about that than the average MAGA person.
Right.
I don't think this was, like Tucker Carlson says, a bunch of little old ladies sightseeing. I think it was a disgusting day, in my opinion.
It shouldn't have happened.
No, it was a disgusting day, and I really was repulsed by Trump's behavior during and after. But that aside, those people should have been pardoned.
Yeah.
Joe Biden should have, if he really wanted to be this great healer.
Demonizing them the way they are.
No.
Listen, if you committed a violent act that day, in other words, you assaulted or harmed somebody,
a cop or something.
Yeah, then I think rightfully you should be charged with that particular crime.
Go to jail.
All this trespassing and holding people for months and years without benefit of hearings or trials and all the other authoritarian kind of stuff they've done with this, that is way beyond excessive.
Yeah, you're not going to get an argument from me on that. No, not at all.
But I agree with you. I think it was an awful day. I don't think it should have happened.
No.
And I didn't understand the whole purpose of having a rally in D.C. that day. To me, that seemed like a bad idea. And I said this before January 6th, prior, when it was first announced they were going to have this rally there. To me, it was like, why? Why do that? Why bring the flame that close to the powder keg, right? Because it just seems like a bad idea.
Well, I guess you were looking at it as a cop. I mean, I was looking at it differently. I actually thought the rally itself on the ellipse, is that what they call that area?
The ellipse, yeah.
I actually thought that was good. Trump supporters coming out and blah, blah, blah. But then obviously got out of hand. But my point is that when Biden became president in his inaugural address, he's talking about healing the nation and, being the great, bringing people together and all that. He could have right then and there done what George Washington did with the Whiskey Rebellion and just issued a blanket pardon.
And brought the temperature down.
Exactly. To anyone, except like you said, if you put your hands on a cop or something, you're going to go to jail.
Well, that's a different animal, yeah.
But other than that, the people who, broke in and did what they did and, trespassed, whatever it was, issue a blanket pardon. Now, he would have paid a political price for it. But it's right at the beginning of his presidency, and that would have worn off after 4 years.
Well, I think
and
it
he could have brought the temperature down. And I think he would have been a more popular president.
Oh, without a doubt. It would have vastly improved his popularity. It would have vastly improved his ability to kind of have... Think about how much political capital he would have gained from that. Because you're gaining so many people from the middle.
Right.
Would not... Maybe they're not going to vote for you, but now at least they'll be a lot more forgiving of you in a lot of other ways. It gives you a lot of political capital to spend. But, Biden's been on the wrong side of everything for 50 years. And
yeah, he has.
Again,
he has. But you do pay political price. When Ford paid the political price, the election was only a year and a half away. See, that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
Biden would have had 4 years
to get behind all this.
Exactly. And that would have worn off a little bit. And sometimes, he's supposedly this guy who puts country before everything else, right? Put the country first like Ford did. Ford knew that pardoning Nixon could cost him the election. He knew that.
But he also knew it was the right thing to do at the time.
And it was, right? Now, at the time, he took a lot of heat. But I'll tell you right now, Mike, any book you read now about the Watergate era, I don't know of one historian who looks back at that now and says that Ford made a mistake.
Right.
It's almost a universally accepted fact that was the right thing to do. It kept the country from having to go through years of prosecutions of a former president. In other words, Mike, it kept the country from going through what
exactly what
went
we just
through.
Did this last year or so.
Exactly. So you want to bring the temperature down in this country, that would have been the thing to do. You want to pardon 100%. Your son too, pardon your fucking son, nobody cares.
I think everybody expected. I don't think anybody was surprised by it at all.
No, they were just the lies.
Nobody's surprised by it.
It's the lies, right?
Well, it is. It's a lot of lying. It's a lot of games. I mean, he sandbagged his own party, which I get why they're pissed off. Mm-hmm. But just beyond that, but the guy did so many other heinous things. And you brought up an excellent point.
What's that? I love when you say that.
When we were talking earlier before we came on and started recording, you mentioned that the pardon goes from 2014 forward.
Mm-hmm. 2014 to now. You can't pardon future crimes.
Right, you can't pardon future crimes, right. But, it goes from 2014 to present. So, that's an excellent point because the timing, right? The timing, 2014 is when our deep state, Victoria Nuland, Blinken, the rest of them, staged a coup in Ukraine and overturned the government, created the world's biggest money laundering operation.
And who was the vice president in 2014, Mike?
That would be Joseph Robinette Biden.
Yes, it would.
And he was also the guy that was in charge of Ukraine at that time for President Obama.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And his
it all
son
comes full circle, right?
got the job there. And and in our next video, we're going to be talking about Syria and some foreign policy and everything. But, everything it really is interesting how everything is connected. And unfortunately, you don't really see all the connections until way down the road when historians get access to things and everything. Yeah. But these connections are so obvious, Mike.
They didn't hide it. They didn't have to.
They don't try.
They didn't have to. Listen, everybody, outrage media, right? We got this 24-hour news cycle now. Outrage media. Everything is, you should be outraged about this, you should be outraged about that. But it lasts about a day. Yeah. And tomorrow they'll give you something new to be. Yesterday people were talking about the aliens invading. I was waiting. I was wearing my Man Backs gear. And nothing happened. I was very upset by that.
Dude, can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I want the fucking aliens to invade.
I am with you on that. You know really what? At least it would change things up a bit and maybe make things a little more interesting for once.
Yeah.
People's attention span has purposefully been eroded over the years, and people have been purposely trained to be, obedient and not observant and just plow through their day and do what they're told, and that's it. And that's become just abundantly obvious to anybody paying attention. And you brought up, again, another excellent point.
Wow, talking about this
today. He did. We had a really great conversation before we started. So talking about how people have been trained over the years to be this way, to not be observant, and brought up an excellent point about Bush and what Bush said post 9/11 and how it relates to everything else. But we'll talk about that in the next video.
Yeah, in fact, while you're waiting for that, see if you could remember after 9/11, and by the way, I do consider George Bush one of the worst presidents of my lifetime, but the way he was after 9/11, I don't think you could have had a better person, honestly.
No, he was good. He was calm, deliberate.
Yeah.
And he did what needed to get done.
That scene with the scene, like it's a movie, I shouldn't say scene, that image of him with the fireman.
Yeah.
Remember? And with the bullhorn. And
yeah, there's a powerful, strong image. Yeah.
Wonderful. But
rally American people behind the cause.
Can you all remember the advice he gave us as Americans on how to deal with this? We're going to talk about that in our next video, a little tease. Looking back on it now, it's really very telling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Mike, so final thoughts on the pardon of Mr. Hunter Biden. I see it personally. I understand. If my son got in trouble for any, like we were saying before, we're not talking about cutting some woman's limbs off and all of that.
Yeah, but something like egregious.
If my son were in trouble, either of my sons were in trouble, and I had a way to legally get them out of it, Mike, I wouldn't hesitate for a second.
That's why you hire a defense attorney, right? To try and defend them,
So I understand that aspect of it. And even politically, look, there have been far more egregious pardons in our history.
Oh, without a doubt.
Than this. The thing I don't like is the lying for 2 years when he knew full damn well he was going to pardon him if he lost the election. Well, probably even if he won the election, because then he doesn't have to worry about re-election. But he knew full damn well he was going to do it. All he had to do was say, let's let justice take its course. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But he didn't. He came on and vehemently, I am not going to pardon him. I'm not going to pardon him.
Because he had the election coming up.
Right. So they call Trump a liar. But this guy lies every fucking minute of the day. Remember when I told you Trump's lies are like a 16-year-old girl's lies?
He exaggerates.
Greatest party ever!
Yeah, he embellishes, he exaggerates.
This guy lies about important shit.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look at how much money's pumped into the Ukraine that keeps pumping back into us, right? For NGOs and defense industry and all that.
Yes, sir.
They just dropped, another $275 billion or something like that?
Oh, God. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
And then $1 billion for Africa for their need to recover from whatever disaster, even though North Carolina is still living in the Stone Age right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Good job. Way to take care of the American people.
Anyway, those were what's your final thoughts about the pardon, Mike? Just how do you think history's going to see it? Do you understand it?
I understand listen, as a father, I could say I understand what he's trying to do. I understand he's taking care of his son. I get that, okay? But ultimately, I think history will view it as another corrupt act of a very corrupt administration. I think that's what it's going to be viewed as. Yeah. It's corrupt covering up for the corrupt, whether it's your son or not. That's basically what it comes down to. And I think that's what it was, and I think that's what it's going to be viewed as historically. Mm-hmm. And, it's not, is it going to affect me or you in the day-to-day right now? Probably not.
Of course not.
But it still shouldn't have happened, And I find it troubling that so many much more egregious crimes will be swept under the rug because of that.
That's it.
You know, and that bothers me.
Because it's not the pardoning. Who cares that he pardoned him for lying on a gun application?
Gun application, yeah.
You know, that's
a stupid crime.
That's
anyway.
the stuff that's out there. But what he's really pardoning him for are the things we don't know, and that's the corruption, or at least we don't know all of, and that's the corruption that went on, you know, in China and with Ukraine and all that. Because now he can't be prosecuted for anything. Although, like I said, I read that article before that if Trump's Justice Department really wants to shed light on this, and if that's the case, he can't claim the fifth. So that's an interesting little caveat. I get it. You know, from the point of view as a father.
Yep.
But don't kid yourselves, guys. This was not a pardon for lying on a gun application or missing paying taxes.
No,
this was a pardon for the things we don't know.
Yeah, this is the blanket cover-up of the entire corrupt little scheme that they had going, the whole Biden Industries, right?
Yep. So
influence peddling.
We won't know this until 50 years from now down the road when documents are declassified and historians get a chance to look at this shit. But we're not going to have any court documents to look at now. So it's interesting. What do you guys think of the pardon? You think it's going to go down in history as a real egregious one? You think it's, you know, who cares sort of a thing? What do you think? Put it in those comments down there.
You know, let us know what you think. Let us know how you feel. Let us know what you see and what you hear, and get in the conversation. Let's keep going, okay? So do us a favor, like, share, you know, subscribe, do all those things. Help us grow the channel. Help us get the conversation going in a much, much bigger format. Because, you know, we should all be having these conversations really on a regular basis, because that's part of the problem we have with our government getting so out of control, is that we weren't having these conversations. Yeah. So let's remedy that. Let's all get together and start talking.
And the people who do have these conversations, like, and I'm not comparing us to Joe Rogan, but, you know, all of a sudden now he's an enemy of the state because he has conversations like this, and he's not even
honest
political.
Conversation. No, he's very apolitical.
He just lets people talk.
Yeah, he's just an interviewer. He likes to, he's a genuinely curious guy. He's a very funny guy. And a genuinely curious guy who just likes to bring on interesting people and let them kind of spell out whatever it is they're into.
And he sits and bullshits with his friends for 3 hours and we watch. And somehow this guy's a menace now because all of a sudden he is bringing people on that talk about the things like we were just talking about.
He dared to bring on the people off the censorship no list that weren't supposed to be heard from.
Yeah, exactly.
How dare you go against a ruling regime, you know?
Yes, sir. Anyway, God bless America.
God bless America's right. Listen.
God bless what it used to be anyway and what it still can be, I hope.
I think it's coming back. I do.
We shall see.
Back, you know?
Listen, Trump...
bumps in the road without a doubt, but I think it's coming back.
I guess we'll talk about this in our video when we talk about the cabinet, but to me, you know, Trump's not going to be able to accomplish everything he wants to accomplish, but I think one thing I hope he does really do is he can shed the sunshine on this stuff. Even if he can't fix it, he can expose it and let us know. And that, I think, is big. My biggest thing for him, the one thing that he absolutely has to do, and I think that's why he put Kash Patel where he did and why that's going to be probably the best pick, just for a teaser. What's that? Sunlight. Declassify everything possible. If you declassify everything possible, you take away their ability to hide, you're going to end 99% of the shit. Yeah, because if you believe that these classified documents are all about national security, that's bullshit. No, it's about national cover-up. Exactly. Corrupt crime cover-up. But even the system itself, like if he could just even just expose the way things are done, the involvement that we have in other countries' affairs. You know, it's funny, I mean, we blame Putin for interfering in our election. There hasn't been a fucking election on the face of the earth in the last 60 years that we haven't had. Go look up Hammer and Scorecard. Look that up. If you want to know how they interfere with other countries' elections, look up Hammer and Scorecard. And if you look that up, you're going to find quite the rabbit hole of shit, and that's a real thing. It's really used. I don't know what that is. It's election software. It's used to steer elections where they want it to. The U.S. government or Central Intelligence, I guess, was probably the ones behind it. We're using it in Iraq in 2003 and 2004 during the Iraqi elections. How about that? Yeah, it shifts votes over to wherever candidate they choose, so that any pro-Western, which is basically just pro-deep state candidate they want in wherever the nation is going to be elected to make sure they can keep just a simplified version of that is you elect a leader that does whatever we tell him to do and when. Exactly. That's what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, it's you know, there's so much. The State Department is at the core of it all. Always. And again, hopefully Trump can shed light on that. Yep. We'll see. There's going to be a lot of fight back. But we'll see. We'll talk about that in another video. In the meantime, let's go up for a smoke, change our shirt, and pretend like our next video is made tomorrow. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one, all right? Remember, like, subscribe, comment, get in the conversation, help us grow this channel. Let's get everything going in the right direction, all right? Peace. Thank you, folks. Good night.